Good morning, and thank you for joining me on the GenQA webinar for using external quality assessment to improve your diagnostic service. My name is Bettina Quellhorst-Pohli, and I am one of the quality managers for GenQA. What we will cover in this webinar today are a number of things. First of all, I will give you a little bit of background on GenQA. Then we will find out what EQA is exactly and why it is important. We will find out what EQA offers, and then in particular what GenQA offers, and how EQA works. The next part is about how you get the most out of EQA, that is as a laboratory as well as an individual. And then we look at post EQA, what you can and should do once you have your EQA results and how they can help your laboratory improve. And we will also look at the impact of EQA on performance of the laboratory in general. And after that, I'm very pleased to be joined by Professor Sandy Deans and Wendy Hannan from Edinburgh. Sandy is the GenQA director and Wendy is my quality manager colleague based in Edinburgh. So background. GenQA stands for Genomic External Quality Assessment and is a UCAS accredited EQA provider operated by Oxford University Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust. And while GenQA has only been operating since 2018, it can draw on over 30 years of experience in EQA. GenQA was created through the merger of UK NEQAS for cytogenetics, UK NEQAS for molecular genetics, and SEQAS. So hence the long-standing experience. And to give you an idea that I have a vague idea of what I'm talking about, I've been quality manager for UK NEQAS for clinical cytogenetics and SEQAS since 2005. GenQA has a governance structure like all accredited EQA providers. We have two offices, one in Oxford and one in Edinburgh, where we are bound by local accountability. We have advice, support, and professional accountability to our specialist advisory groups. They are groups that exist for every discipline we deal with, that be prenatal, postnatal, NGS, hematology, molecular pathology, etc. These specialist advisory groups are made up of assessors from the relevant EQAs. The chairs of these specialist advisory groups sit on the GenQA Advisory Board, which is our top overseeing body or supporting body. The GenQA board comprises, as I said, of all the SAG chairs, as well as invited experts and the director of NEQAB in the UK. There's also professional accountability to the UK NEQAS Consortium, and performance surveillance is done by national quality assurance bodies such as NEQAB in the UK and FOPH in Switzerland. We are also, as I said, accredited by UCAS, so our service is assessed on an annual basis. And not necessarily at the bottom, but supporting everything we do, and the people we are doing it for are our participating laboratories. So what is EQA and why is it important? The term external quality assessment is used to describe a method that allows for comparison of laboratories' testing to a source outside the laboratory. That's the official definition. Now, what does that mean? It means that it is a level playing field for all laboratory or all participants. Everybody gets the same samples, the same images to analyze and report, so we receive comparable results. the EQA process helps laboratories to produce a valid and accurate test result and manage risk. So how does it manage risk? Mainly by giving the laboratory a opportunity to analyze samples and report samples that are not connected to a patient. So it is a risk-free space where you can make mistakes and you can improve without having a patient attached to it. It also promotes efficiency and encourages innovation in the laboratory and makes sure that you meet the needs of your service users. As laboratory samples cross borders, it is important that you're able to compete nationally and internationally. And participation in EQA will allow you to let your service users in your own country as well as abroad know that your laboratory is of a satisfactory standard. And it also improves comparability between the different laboratories. Another reason why EQA is important is because ISO say so. The ISO standard 15189, which is probably very familiar to all of you working in a laboratory, states in section 5.6.1 that laboratories should participate in an interlaboratory comparison program, such an external quality assessment program, wherever possible. And it has a footnote saying that this EQA provider or EQA program should ideally be accredited to ISO 17043. Furthermore, OECD guidelines specify that there are requirements for quality and competence, and that participation in EQA is recommended. Another reason why EQA is important is because the laboratory has responsibilities towards its service users. And an EQA program checks the entire examination process, including pre- and post-examination procedures. And it should be overtaken for all aspects of your diagnostic service. So that means if you offer a test diagnostically, then you should participate in EQA where it is available. And EQA should and must be included at an early stage of a diagnostic test introduction, not only to make sure that you're doing things right from the beginning, but also to help you formalize your processes and procedures for this new test. Laboratories are responsible for developing a quality policy, which will inevitably include EQA, and participate in the implementation of corrective actions. Regular participation is crucial, and regular is every year for every test you undertake, because only that way can you monitor your progress, can you detect any deficiencies in your service or any areas for improvement rather, and always remember that you're only as good as your last EQA run. So what does EQA offer? EQA offers realistic case scenarios. EQA offers independently validated samples. In the case of GenQA, EQA offers various techniques such as array, NGS, MLPA, qFPCR, online image analysis, and most importantly, EQA gives you feedback from an international panel of expert advisors. Now, what does GenQA offer in particular? We're unique in offering end-to-end genomic testing. By that I mean that we offer anything, EQAs for anything from sample handling through technical competence, analysis, and that includes image analysis online, interpretation of results, report writing, genetic counseling. We give you access to rarer cases and mutations, There's an overview of testing strategies and techniques used by other laboratories that is given in the summary report. And GenQA also offers educational services such as GTAC, which is a competency tool I'll come to later, and webinars and workshops. Workshops are those things where you sit in one room with people and discuss particular issues. That's something that has happened in the past and hopefully will happen again in the future, but for the time being, it has been replaced by the webinars, such as this one. What does GenQA offer? In addition to what I just said, is prenatal EQA, including NIPT, pre-implantation genetic testing, postnatal EQAs, newborn screening, NGS, molecular genetics, molecular pathology, hematology, sample handling, clinical genetics, and GTAC, which I mentioned earlier, which is strictly speaking not an EQA, but an individual training and assessment and competency tool. This is a modular assessment tool which offers all sorts of aspects of laboratory testing and laboratory procedures. It is geared towards the individual, not the entire laboratory, and can be used as an individual training tool to be assessed and evaluated by the line manager rather than an external panel of experts. So how does EQA work? It's no great mystery. It's a 12-month running process or rolling process. You enroll, you receive EQA samples, they have been validated. You analyze them using your routine procedures. You write your usual reports with the interpretation of results for most EQAs, and you return that to the EQA provider. We then at GenQA, together with the panels of expert advisors, evaluate and assess the laboratory submissions, produce individual laboratory reports and summary reports, which are published to the participants. These reports allow you to not only see what comments were made with regards to your individual reports that you submitted, but also allow you to benchmark your submissions and your report results and scores with or against laboratories, other laboratories that have participated in this EQA. And before you worry, all this is completely anonymous. Once you've had your EQA results back, you can look at any training needs, internal reviews, or quality improvements resulting from the comments on your individual laboratory report or in the summary report, and then you do it all again the next year. Now, the samples we send out to GenQA resemble as closely as possible the relevant clinical material you would routinely see in your laboratories. So we're sending out DNA, we're sending out blood and cells, fixed cell suspensions, plasma, saliva, FFP, embedded sections, fresh tissues, and images. All samples are supplied by accredited laboratories where possible and are validated by at least 2 independent laboratories covering all techniques applicable for the EQA and all platforms where applicable. Now, the validation is done by consensus. If the laboratories return the results that we expect for the sample, then the validating laboratories, that is, then we will use the sample for EQA. If there is no consensus between the validating laboratories, then the sample will not be sent to participants. We also, it's worth saying, we also validate more samples than we need for every EQA to give us a little bit of flexibility. The clinical cases and case scenarios are appropriate to the referral reasons set by the EQA leads and the expert advisors in collaboration. So this is not a solitary effort. Again, it is all done by discussion and consensus. Most EQAs comprise of 2 or 3 cases for analysis and interpretation, although there are some EQAs that are analysis only. We also offer a clinical genetics EQA, which is a sequential case scenario where you would receive information about a patient, you would then answer some questions, submit those answers, and then would receive more information about the case and the patient. So basically, it would evolve like a normal genetic counseling session would evolve. Together with the samples, online or wet samples, we send distribution letters, which include not only the sample details and the testing required, but also submission deadlines, supporting information, and referral cards. Where appropriate, there will be sample preparation instructions, and there's a website user guide that can be downloaded from the landing page once you've logged into your laboratory account, which will give you a step-by-step guide for everything from enrollment to retrieving your performance certificates and anything that happens EQA-wise in between. As I said before, all GenQA reports are submitted online. They should be uploaded by the laboratory as a PDF file, and for some EQAs, there may be a form to complete and upload instead. As for the clinical genetics EQA, as I explained earlier, there's a completion of sequential questions required. The submission, just a little note, requires a special access permission, which is usually held or initially held for every laboratory by the primary contact. However, if you or any other member of staff require this permission, then this can be added to your account by the primary contact. And again, if there are any difficulties or if you have any questions, then contact the scheme office under info@jenkwa.org, and we will do whatever we can to help you. Reports should not contain laboratory identifying details such as names and addresses, because our EQA works on an anonymity of the laboratory. We do not want our assessors to know who you are. All laboratory reports are identified to the assessors in the online assessment interface by the GenQA unique laboratory number that you have been given at enrollment. The assessment is taking place in stages, and all submissions are assessed by the panel of international experts against set marking criteria. These marking criteria are set for every EQA case, so they're not repeatable. They are specific to the EQA case, and again, they are set by consensus and fine-tuned once the submissions have reached us. Full EQAs are scored and point deductions are given for errors and omissions, and pilot EQAs are scored, but there's no performance designation given. So the process is as outlined below. We set the marking criteria, then the individual expert advisors assess the submissions, then they meet in an assessors meeting where submissions or reports where there was no consensus by the assessors are discussed in details, and the consensus is sought, and all other submissions are finalized for return to the laboratory in the ILR. And after that, the scheme office or GenQA, together with the expert advisors, produces the individual laboratory reports and the summary report. As an accredited EQA provider, we undertake performance monitoring, and all our performance criteria are ratified by NEQA. Performance criteria are available for all the disciplines, so prenatal, postnatal, pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, hematology, etc., all have their own performance criteria, and they are ratified and reviewed by NEQA in regular intervals. We have two performance designations, satisfactory or poor. And a poor performance results from a critical or severe error, which can be analytical or genotyping or interpretation. And such errors will either affect patient management or show a critical lack of analytical skill, i.e. if you miss an abnormality. All poor performance is ratified by the relevant SAG following the appeals process. So it is not something that the EQA lead and the assessors decide and then pass on to the participant. Once the appeals process, which happens after the preliminary EQA results are published, is closed and the appeals have been dealt with, the SAG responsible for the EQA will look at all the poor performance in this EQA and ratify it again by consensus. So there's quite an involved process before we actually give a final poor performance designation. The feedback you get is the individual laboratory report. See this little picture on the side, which gives you the EQA name, EQA year, and also comments on the analysis, interpretation, and clerical accuracy for each case that you participated in. And it gives you the score and the performance designation. So this is individual to your laboratory submission. You also get a summary report which gives detailed information about the EQA and participations. It outlines other testing techniques used by different laboratories, all the comments made by assessors. It also gives the validated results for you to check against your own results, and it allows you benchmarking against other laboratories taking part in EQA. So how do you get the most out of EQA? Do treat EQA samples just as any other diagnostic sample coming into the lab. So don't just give it to the head of department to deal with. It should follow your usual routine allocation of diagnostic samples. Follow your usual diagnostic practice where possible, and bear in mind that your internal methods should be robust and reproducible. EQA samples may, however, have a different DNA extraction method or buffer, but this will be mentioned in the distribution letter, and where applicable, you will receive sample preparation instructions. Start the analysis as soon as possible. Now, that seems to be an obvious point, but believe me, it is not. If you have any problems with samples, for example, the sooner you let us know that you have a difficulty with the sample, the sooner we will be able to provide you with a replacement sample wherever possible. If you only find out that your sample doesn't work because you have, before you submit in a week's time, then we will not have enough time to send you a replacement sample, and that will have a negative impact on your EQA performance. Don't give the EQA analysis only to the most experienced staff. As I mentioned before, follow your routine allocation of samples to staff, and don't do analysis and reporting by committee. All reports will presumably in your laboratory be signed off by a senior member of staff, so leave the preparatory work, the analysis, and the initial report writing to whoever does that routinely. It is not a committee exercise. Again, don't leave the analysis until the last minute. As explained before, if you have problems with your sample or any other problems, then you'll be very, very grateful for any additional day that you have to do your analysis in and your reporting. Bear in mind that you're working with online services, so internal server problems may cause difficulties last minute. And believe me, that happens quite frequently, that laboratories try to submit their reports and then their internal server falls over or there's some other problem and they can't submit, which is no problem for us really, but it does add to your stress levels. And we don't want EQA to be an overly stressful exercise. Bear in mind that EQA report times are usually longer than those suggested by professional reporting guidelines. So you've done your EQA, you've submitted your results, you've got your reports back. So what happens now? The learning continues. EQA is an educational exercise, not a personal exercise. So be objective and always bear that in mind, that it is educational. This time we do suggest that you look at results as a team because the entire team should learn from it. Don't expect full marks if you have a satisfactory performance. Be proud of achieving a satisfactory performance. That's as good as it gets. And remarks and comments are there to help you improve your service. And as we all know, there is always room for improvement. Understand the ILR comments as guidance, not as criticism. As I said before, EQA is educational, not punitive. And share the EQA results as widely with your team as you possibly can, so everybody has the opportunity to learn and to improve. And also benchmark your scores to the other laboratories with the summary report, so you know where you stand in the great scheme of things. Now, if your results were not what you expected, still review the EQA results and summary report as a team. This is possibly more important now than when the results are satisfactory, because there will be learning to be done. Do root cause analysis, and if you have any questions or any uncertainties, contact the scheme office. We're always happy to help, and we might be able to give you pointers of how to improve things. Review and audit your practices regularly and address any issues raised in the individual laboratory reports as soon as possible to prevent them from being repeated. You can also use online EQA cases for training for other staff. And again, I can't emphasize enough, EQA is an educational tool that is designed to help you improve your service, not to point out any negative aspects. So the impact of performance on performance of EQA, years of experience and providing EQA has shown us that continued EQA participation has shown to help laboratories decrease analytical and genotyping errors, improve their interpretation skills, produce more concise and user-friendly reports by following reporting guidelines and best practice guidelines, and also reduce their reporting times. But the important word in this slide is continued. So it is not enough that you do 1 year and say, oh, well, we did all right, so don't have to do it next year. Or even worse, you didn't do all right and think, oh, I'm not going to do that again in a hurry. Only continued participation will ensure that you really benefit from EQA in the way that your laboratory and you as a scientist can benefit from it. And if we started this focus on webinar on the flyer with Aristotle saying that EQA is not an act, it's a habit, then I would like to sum up with another clever man who's a bit more recent, Mark Twain, who said that continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection. And as we know and understand, and as I hopefully pointed out in this webinar, continuous improvement happens one step at a time. And before I ask Sandy Deans and Wendy Hannan to join me for the question and answer session, I would like to show you that there are so many ways that you can keep up to date and get in touch with GenQA, either by signing up for the newsletter, looking at the events page. You can join us on Twitter. You can join our YouTube channel. So, and you can always email info@genkwa.org if you have any questions whatsoever regarding EQA or how EQA can help you. So I would like to thank you again for joining me on this webinar today, and I'm pleased to welcome Professor Sandy Deans and Wendy Hannan for the question and answer session.
Thank you, Bettina. It's Sandy here. Hello, everyone. Wendy's going to join us. And Bettina, do you want to pop your camera on as well so we can have our question and answer session? So,
yeah, I will.
Perfect. I think the best thing to do is people can pop their questions into the question box, which is part of the GoToMeeting webinar setup, or in the chat to us or everyone. We've already had one question asking about will the recording be available post this session? And the answer to that is yes, it will be. We understand that everyone has very much time competing elements in their lives, so are not always available when we run these webinars. So what will happen is you'll get a link following this webinar to access the link through GoToMeetings, and then after 1 month it will be made available on the GenQA YouTube channel. So that means you can then forward it on to any of your colleagues who wish to access it if they've not already registered for this webinar. So we are open access, and obviously GenQA is very heavily involved in education, and this is how we can get out to a lot of our participants. As Bettina's very eloquently said, we're not out and about in conferences or presenting at this moment in time due to the situation that we are in. We have another questioner says, so Bettina, I'll maybe ask you to answer this one. Can you share an EQA sample between staff? So for example, one books in, one analyses and another reports.
Certainly, if that is that your routine laboratory procedure, then that is what you should do. I mean, EQA should never be a special case. EQA should always follow your usual laboratory procedures and processes. So if you routinely split or share these processes, then yes, that is indeed what you should do for the EQA.
Great, thank you. And I would imagine that is pretty much standard, because the team that works in sample reception is probably not the team that actually authorises your reports and releases them to participants, so or service users. So yes, I think as Bettina says, your usual process. Zoe has submitted a question. Is there any way to get a participation certificate for these sessions if you don't attend this live session? I think Abby may be able to come in here. I presume not, due to the fact that we would not be able to track who had viewed the YouTube channels on a personal level.
That's right, Sandy. Unfortunately, if you don't attend the live webinar, you can't get a participation certificate.
Okay, thank you, Abby. I guess that's a GDPR issue with YouTube and open access, isn't it? So that's out with our control. Okay, Hannah has submitted a question. Lovely intro to the EQA, thank you. So does GenQA have any schemes for sequencing of bacteria, viruses, etc.? So actually very timely, Hannah. We have just set up a collaboration over the last last week or so with UK NEQAS microbiology. So being part of the UK NEQAS consortium means that we have expertise right across all of the laboratory medicine and pathology disciplines. So we can draw on the expertise from each NEQAS centre. So obviously we have the genomic and the genetic sequencing expertise, but we do not have the facilities to be able to distribute bacteria or viral samples. So we are collaborating with UK NEQAS microbiology to provide a SARS-CoV-2 viral sequencing EQA scheme, and that should be starting up in the next couple of weeks. The reason behind this is the new vast sequencing efforts for looking for variants of concern. So there's a real need there for this to be stood up as quickly as possible. So we are looking into delivering that. For the other elements of bacterial sequencing and other viral sequencing, then as I mentioned, we would point you in the direction of one of our other UK NEQAS centres who'd be able to help. So I would suggest you look up UK NEQAS itself on the web, and they will be able to point you into the direction of the right NEQAS centre to deliver that. Okay, will the GenQA timetable a number of samples per scheme return to normal this year as COVID restrictions are lifted? So that's from Melissa. The next, or when did you want to take that one? No, I don't think we can hear you.
Okay, shall I have a go?
Go for it, Bettina. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, well, we're trying our best. I mean, obviously the whole COVID situation is still in flux, and we are planning for running the EQA timetable as we have published it, and with the full EQA cases as we have published them. But as all our participants will understand, if things turn sour again, then we will have to review that, and we will show the same flexibility that we did last year.
Thank you, Bettina. And I think the other element there is we're very aware that there's consumable shortages, not just of reagents, but also the plasticware and just really basic things like tips and plates and all those types of things that you need to deliver your service. So we don't want to impact on the clinical service of the labs. So we're quite happy to extend turnaround times in results being uploaded if that is a particular concern with you. I know it, particularly in PGT, that is a big issue at the moment in time. Yeah. Okay, how reliable is shipping samples to Southeast Asia, specifically during the pandemic? Bettina, I believe we've not had any issues at all. I think we're having more issues of getting samples into Europe following Brexit, yeah, although that has now all been smoothly resolved.
Yeah, we've found out that the biggest distances between England and continental Europe. Everything else is easy. We haven't had any specific problems with Southeast Asia at this point. Well, certainly not last year, and we're not really anticipating any this year. But again, if there are problems, if your samples are delayed, then do let us know in good time, and we are always flexible to extend your submission period to make sure that you have enough time to carry out your analysis and reporting.
Thank you, Bettina. So a couple of questions in the same vein. How do we get our participation certificates? Abby, can you give some guidance to that one, please?
So if you've accessed the live webinar, the participation certificates should be sent out in a follow-up email 1 hour after the end of the webinar.
Perfect. So they're pending then. They'll be on their way to you very shortly. Great, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, question from Simon. Is GenQA working towards consistency in assessment between schemes? So for example, ISCN is required for the prenatal rapid aneuploidy detection, but summary statement is sufficient for products of conception for QF-PCR. I'll probably take that one because that's more of a science one. The answer is yes, very much so. Simon, you very well know that the two molecular NEQAS schemes and the cytogenomics schemes have come together. So from January 2018, we merged to become Genomics Quality Assessment Scheme, reflecting really the changes that were happening across the labs. And because of that, we're now drawing on the strengths that we have in the team from the cyto side and the molecular side. So we're trying very hard to standardise the marking and the approach to assessment. We have to take our assessors along with us. We need to have that reassurance that they agree that the marking and the standard that we're expecting from the labs is consistent and they are happy with it as well, bearing in mind we want consistency across our scheme. So yes, it's something that we're looking at very closely. We've started making all the clerical accuracy scoring consistent. So you'll see that will be kicking in this year. We've done a lot of work in 2020 to do that. And we're now looking at the interpretation and the genotyping as well. Obviously, it depends, the output of each lab is very different depending on the approach of testing and whether it is a cyto lab or a molecular lab or a combined genomics lab. So we need to make sure that everyone understands what the scoring will be applied and will not be surprised if we change it very quickly. So we have to, as I say, not just take our assessors along with us, but our participants as well. So yes, bear with us. We are working towards that. Okay, there's a few more questions here. So Zoe is saying, really interested in the GTAC genomics training and competencies offered by GenQA. Are there any plans to expand the topics covered? Absolutely. I'm afraid the genomics element of GTAC has been sort of stood down during 2020 due to the COVID impact, whereby we were commissioned by the UK Department of Health and Social Care to stand up quite a few COVID related individual modules. Some of these were lab-based, as in PPE, correct use of PPE, sample handling of COVID samples coming into the laboratory, inactivation and reporting of COVID. Also, we stood up a GTAC module for COVID swabbing in care homes, and we've had a successful participation, particularly in that module. We had over 35 completed assessments, 35,000 completed assessments. So I think that in our hands, that is definitely our biggest EQA run we've ever done. But now the focus has shifted back to genomics, and we're putting a lot of effort into GTAC, particularly for running variant interpretation EQA, so about classifying not just copy number, single nucleotide variants, but also copy number variants. We're looking at hematology type variants, and we're also looking at somatic variants, and we'll set that up through GTAC. And we also want to expand the sample reception and the reporting elements that are already in there. So yes, very much there's so much we can do on that system that we're really quite excited. But if you do have suggestions of areas that we should address, then please do let us know. That would be great. Okay, this is a thank you for the nice presentation, Bettina. So I have a question about GenQA feedback, i.e. the summary report. So Bettina, maybe you could cover this one. Will it contain the results from all participated laboratories? Also, which fish probes were used in the case of molecular pathology? Are you able to do that one?
Yes, I'll have a go. Yes, it will, no. It will not include the results from all laboratories. It will include comments that assessors made throughout the assessment. So that is the summary information that you're getting. Reports from all laboratories. We have EQAs with over 180 participants. That is not, and 2 cases, that is not a viable option. Also, it would have certain GDPR issues, I would assume, even though I'm not an expert on that. The other question, or part of the question, as to the probes used, yes, that information is given. As well as information about different testing strategies employed by the different laboratories that participated. I hope that covers it.
Thank you, Bettina. And I think the way we get round about looking at around GDPR is providing the average and the mean scores, isn't it? So you can actually benchmark your own scoring against the whole run, and also you have your own individual laboratory report, so you get specific assessor feedback through that mechanism as well. Okay, so we have another question. Is there a way to provide a copy of the official invoice in advance? Our institution's process for payment is very slow. I think we all can understand that one. We working in healthcare, we know that that's not always a slick process. It's something that we don't routinely do, but if you do need a quote or an invoice early in the year, then please do contact us on info@genqa.org and we can facilitate that for you. Absolutely.
Alternatively, you can download your order. There's instructions on how to do that in the website user guide. The only thing you need to do is you need to remember to add the EQA annual administration fee to that. But some laboratory or some hospital finance departments are happy with just that document rather than a pro forma invoice. But as Sandy said, if you need a pro forma, then that's something we can provide.
It is. Thank you very much. Wendy, we'll come to you for this one here. Can MLA staff contribute to EQA booking and testing?
Absolutely. As Bettina said earlier, the whole point of EQA is to treat the samples exactly as you would your routine clinical samples. So if that is your role to book in samples or analyse them, then you should continue to do that for EQA samples.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Wendy. Okay, I'm going to come both to Wendy and Bettina, so maybe Bettina first. What advantage does GenQA have over the other EQA providers?
Well, that's a difficult one. I've never worked for another EQA provider. So apart from
chance to show off our services.
Okay. Well, one thing that I mentioned already in the talk is that we are unique in providing end-to-end genomic testing. So anything from sample handling to genetic counseling, the whole gamut of services is covered by EQAs for GenQA. The other advantage is that while we are providing wet samples for EQAs, all the communication with GenQA is online, so you do not have to ship forth and back any return samples or anything. It is all, you submit your reports online, you communicate with us online, you receive your ILRs and summary reports and any other feedback online, and you also get or can download your performance certificates at the end of the EQA year from your user account. So that makes it much easier for laboratories across different time zones from the UK to communicate and interface with GenQA.
Thank you, Bettina. Wendy, what would you say was our unique selling point?
Well, it may not be unique, but I think the staff that are employed within GenQA, many have come from a laboratory background, so have worked in 15189 labs, so are aware of the needs of the participants and what you can get out of EQA. We're also a very approachable team, and we're willing to help and offer advice wherever it is required. As Sandy and Bettina have both said, if you just get in touch at info@genqa.org and we will answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Wendy. And just to add to that, personally, I take great pride that the team has such a high level of scientific expertise. We do have a lot of consultant clinical scientists or principal clinical scientists as part of the team that run our EQAs, and I think that is where that extra element and the help and support can come to the labs, is through that expertise. And also we have a fantastic technical team that have a lot of knowledge to help deliver these EQAs as well. So I think that's a real bonus that we have within our team. So as there's no further GenQA queries on the questions, I think we'll close there on that high note of us selling our services. I hope you found this very useful. Please do tell your colleagues if you think anyone would be interested to access the recording on YouTube. If you have any suggestions of other focus on webinars that you would like us to provide, then please do let us know. We're here to deliver your needs as well, and we've already got quite a full program for about the next 6 months, so please do keep checking and see if there's anything else that you'd be interested to hear about from our perspective. A huge thank you to Bettina for providing a great summary and background of EQA and how it benefits the labs, and also for Wendy for joining us on the Q&A panel. Thank you very much. Bettina, do we have a feedback slide just to let participants know?
Yes, now I have to figure out how to share my slides again.
Okay, so I think you will get an email requesting you to complete an online survey just for some feedback from us.
I just had it.
Is that right, Abby? And then you can access to get your participant certificate will be emailed through within an hour or so. Yeah. Ah, lovely. Here we are.
Okay, here we are. So,
yep, so
this
the survey will be sent out to those who have been registered. It will be available to view on the GenQA YouTube channel, so please subscribe to that. And as mentioned, you will get participation certificates. And then just a flash update for March 2021, the focus on topic will be a molecular pathology based webinar on RET testing, and this is on the back of the licensing which is imminent for RET testing, and also requests from participants on a bit of scientific background of why RET testing is so important in the oncology space. So that just leaves me to thank everyone very much for joining today, and I hope you found it a very useful educational webinar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.